On this episode of The Rest is Entertainment, we're talking about Britney Spears, who has just sold her entire music catalogue for an estimated $200 million. Is this a sign that new music is dead? Also, we're going to talk about Polymarket and Kalshi, these prediction markets that may be changing television and how we watch it forever. Now, Britney. Our old friend.
It's Britney. Bitch, as they, in the parlance of Britney. Britney Spears has just sold her catalogue to Primary Wave, which is a fund that buys up lots of these sorts of things. Now, what does this all mean? Okay, Bruce Springsteen sold his catalogue.
Half $1 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
I mean, it's extraordinary, the money in it.
Queen sold for over $1 billion.
Yeah. Half of Michael Jackson was 600 million. It's not exactly clear what she's sold. Sony still own and control the masters of her recordings. Any publishing stream she has, in her case, not a lot, 'cause she didn't write her own hits mostly. But it's more likely artist royalties, which is her share of recorded performance royalties. And we don't know how much she sold for. People are suggesting $200 million.
Yes.
As I say, I've seen that figure quoted, but I don't know. And people in the music business don't really know, apart from the people who've done this deal.
It won't be insanely different to that.
Digging into the numbers briefly at the start, she earns about 1.5 million off Spotify annually. We can see that. Now, if you add in all the other music streamers and YouTube and film and TV licensing, she probably gets $7 or $8 million a year. So why sell?
This episode is brought to you by Octopus Energy.
Now, it is award season. Everyone is wondering who's going to clean up. And we tend to think awards are about that one big moment, like, oh my goodness, that one night, that speech, I can't believe I've won. But
the effort that goes into winning an award.
Everyone going for one of those big movie awards, it's not a coincidence that Academy members or whatever are saying, oh, did you see that thing? Yeah, I did. It was really good. There is a remorseless, many months campaign, and there are tens of people working on every single film's awards campaign.
I thought you were going to say tens of thousands.
No.
But there are tens.
Yeah, there are tens, but that's quite a lot when you think of like one, and it's a full-time job.
We mention this only because we are announcing our presenting partnership with the lovely people at Octopus Energy, who have just won the Which Recommended Provider of the Year for the 9th time in a row. And that is not something you get just by...
Which is hard to win.
Which is hard to win.
Which is hard to win.
But 9 in a row, I would say that makes Octopus Energy the Meryl Streep of the business.
Oh, yeah, they're the Meryl. They're the absolute... They're the Meryl.
I call them Meryl Energy. That's what I call them.
The end of her conservatorship, remember she was in this very, very restrictive relationship where parents were essentially legal guardians and she wasn't able to do anything. When that came to an end, when Britney was freed, as it were, they think she had about 60 million. Now they think she's down to 40 million. It's insane spending, private jets. I mean, bless her, she makes very bad decisions. And there's a sense that there's possibly a cash crisis. If this is what she sold it for, there won't be any more problems in that department for now. In terms of why acquire catalogues...
Yeah. Can I also say it's incredibly boring, but incredibly tax efficient to sell your back catalogue. If she can make 7 to 8 million a year in royalties, she is paying what we would consider income tax on that. If she can sell to a company, and there's various ways that you can kind of package that up, she will pay essentially what we would call capital gains tax. So I know that's boring, but it just means that suddenly she's probably paying about half the tax. It makes sense for her to have it now. If you are Primary Wave, that's the interesting question, because if she is making 8 million a year, it takes you 25 years to pay that back, which is of no interest to any financial company ever. So they must have bigger plans for it.
Why do people acquire catalogue? First of all, it's got this huge long-term value. I would say that in the case of Britney's catalogue, John M. Chu, who did Wicked, is doing the Britney biopic. That will be very, very big. 90s music is on a tear. I'm going to get to that a lot in a minute. Other markets like Asia, Latin America are kind of growing.
They're betting she's going to have years where she's making 25, 30 million.
Yeah, because I tell you, because she is iconic.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a word you would use to describe like an outfit someone wore on a reality TV show that you loved.
Yeah.
But actually what I mean about Britney Spears is she has been on a journey. She endures. New people discover her, and her story, maybe it will end happily, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
But above all, she is a story. And there is something about that type of artist and that type of catalogue that makes it a very, very interesting investment.
And this is
And as I say, a lot of artists have cashed out.
Yeah, well, this is a financial note. The reason why this market has become so huge is due to Spotify, because the one thing financial institutions need is they need data as to how well whatever they're buying has performed and how they might be able to ramp that up. And what Spotify has given them sort of for the first time is a yearly indication of, you are definitely getting this much money each year, because I can show you for the last 10 years how much she streamed, how much that made her, if that's gone up, if that's gone down. And so they have a base level of going, okay, we understand this is an asset that will bring us in £2 million a year. Whatever happens, that's going absolutely nowhere, and we can see a way of ramping that up. So the fact that there was a dependability in the figures means that people have started buying catalogue. If, for example...
But it's become like an institutional level asset,
exactly.
Which is a really weird way to think about creativity, and yet here we all are.
But now we understand how much the legacy of a band can make each year. Absolutely, you can see that number on a spreadsheet, and so we can work out, okay, we can give you £200 million for that in a way they wouldn't have been able to do 15 years ago.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, if you look at the artists who've sold and you say, okay, Springsteen, Dylan, whatever, you're now looking at people. It wasn't that long ago that Justin Bieber, I can't remember when he did it, but Justin Bieber sold his for 200 million. Katy Perry sold, now Britney. There is a sense among people in the music industry that the sellers are getting younger, and it might start a wave of people doing this. So catalogue is not frontline new music, not all the new things. The theory was that in lockdown, catalogue took over from new music. The first lockdown, something like 67% of playlists had nostalgia in it. Gen Z now listens to more catalogue music than they do new music. That says something about the cultural moment we find ourselves in.
Rock music is turning into classical music.
Yeah.
You would think it's insane if a new classical composer sold more than Mozart. In the same way you would now think it's insane if Fontaine's DC was selling more than Queen.
Exactly.
That's where we've got to.
And they come to it via various routes. The routes why they come to it via TikTok. It's a background tracks, things like that. And nostalgia is just like a monster tag on TikTok. But they also, what's interesting is they have this idea of a sort of like an idyll. Like there was this pre-digital time when culture wasn't splintered and it wasn't siloed, and they sort of want to go back there. And it's interesting. There are club nights where Gen Z will listen to all this type of music. Fauxstalgia, it's not nostalgia. They weren't there in the first place. It's not like school disco when people used to go and listen to the sort of hits that were around when they were kids. It's almost like a false memory, kind of in that way that some boomers think that they were in World War II. Yeah. When famously, guys, you weren't, but much less annoying than that.
Yeah. So you're saying there's a lot of 25-year-olds who think they saw Nirvana at the Brighton escape rooms?
Or they didn't. I don't know. They wish they had.
It was the escape club. I just called it the escape rooms. That's terrible. 16-year-old me would be.
Would hate you.
Brighton escape rooms is something very different. Yeah.
But it's yearning, again, that we talk about. I don't know if you've heard this word that's like a big sort of trend word of 2026, friction maxing. The idea to kind of shun digital convenience and go back to things like vinyl. But the music that comes from these times, they have such a suspicion, a deep suspicion and cynicism, Gen Z, about music from now. Yeah. Because people understand so much of what machines and computers are capable of. And so even manufactured bands from the past, obviously people are put together on a TV show are more authentic than artists now who have come up in a non-manufactured way.
Well, it's like I've talked before about AI. There's a time before it and a time after it, and the time before we know it was made by human beings, and that starts to become a premium, and it's already happening. You're
so right. They just feel like it sounds more authentic, and that as the sounds have become so computerized or so overproduced, or maybe that they know when it was made, and therefore they're just suspicious of it. And there is another thing that's interesting with Gen A below them. Gen A, 70% of Gen A have millennial parents, and they have a kind of a shared culture. They listen to the same things. They are totally time blind. They literally don't care when the music came from. They're not like, we were, where we wanted to be listening to the things that came out now, and like some stuff and obviously you get older and you think, oh, actually, whatever things my parents like were cool. But there's none of that sort of sense that you have to reject everything that came before you. Artists that create kind of whole worlds, their music is particularly conducive to being caught again by these new. Think of someone like ABBA; they're so their own world. What does it matter where they came from?
You look at the top 20 album charts at the moment, which is physical sales of albums, which is where you would expect the newer, younger bands to be, because you actually have to buy these things. In the top 20, you have got Queen, you have got Elton John, you've got Fleetwood Mac, you've got Oasis, you have got ABBA, you've got Linkin Park, for heaven's sake. All of these legacy acts just stick around. Those, there are albums there that have been in the charts for 20 years. They don't stick around with their fans. They're rediscovered being rediscovered by young people. ABBA is massive with under 21s. I would say are massive.
Yeah, you're right.
We're not American.
ABBA are massive with under 21s.
That's like when you watch the World Cup and they say England is playing great here. You think, no, England are playing great. And actually, they're playing badly. Yeah. But it's R.
Well, get used to it for summer. Okay. But a third of Beatles listeners are under 28. There's certain bands that, just like you were sort of laughing about Linkin Park, Arctic Monkeys always have young fans. Because a lot of artists want to move forward. They're kind of propulsive. And you live through this, you tour it, and then you want to make something new. And you don't want to go back. And the ones who are doing the best now are the ones who are not sort of afraid or precious about the decontextualization of their music. Not saying, it's a moment in time. It's a new moment in time and you better let new people discover it. They also discover it via sync. Sync is obviously the licensing of music to be used in film, TV soundtracks, and it is an absolutely huge window of discovery now. There's so many retro TV shows. Say there's things like Derry Girls, Stranger Things, obviously the behemoth, where people are finding tracks because of that, and then they're doing a catalogue dive because of that. So sometimes those moments are just like a flash in the pan for the industry and they can't really do anything with it. There are plenty of other occasions where they can kind of build it into a campaign for an artist. And if you look at someone like Kate Bush, who's Running Up the Hill, wasn't just used though. I mean, that's the dream for an artist. It's not just used in season 4 of Stranger Things. It's an actually really significant plot point, and a part of the whole emotional arc of it all, and is intimately bound up with the story. And she, I think, at the last count, had got something like 10.8 million so far from that. And
that's a great person for it to go to, by the way.
You couldn't be happier, and that people are discovering her. I mean, she is iconic in that way that I said about Britney. She is there, and it's such a created world, and you can discover. And when you discover it, you go on a deep dive into it, and you understand it. And it doesn't matter that she wasn't on your Top of the Pops, and that you don't even know what Top of the Pops is. It doesn't matter, because it's just it's a whole world, and you want to lose yourself in it.
We have definitely reached a tipping point where new music is no longer the thing. And if you go back, if you want to watch an old Top of the Pops on BBC4, it was all new stuff, new bands coming along all the time, new eras, so much stuff happening. And now, of course, you'll get Taylor Swift brings out a new album, Bruno Mars will bring something out, Bad Bunny will bring something out. Now, of course, you can go back. There's a reason why this generation finds the Beatles, because they listen to it and it turns out it was the best music of that era, and it's better than almost all the music since that era. Definitely a tipping point, right? It's definitely the tipping point happened 4 years ago. 5 years ago.
I remember in that when we were talking to Adam Curtis about Shifty, and we were talking about the sort of the birth of remixing and just that. And he said, I really feel that there was a sense that we kept pushing culture through the same thing and just finding different ways to look at it. I definitely feel this now, that we're almost stuck, and lots of people, including in the music industry, feel it's strange. A new thing's really, fewer and fewer new things going to be created because people are just finding different ways to rediscover the past.
Well, Agatha Christie still sells 20 million books a year, and will do forever now. That was going to happen to pop music at some point. We still, I'm 55, and there was still the sense in the 70s and certainly the 80s that music was still stretching its legs, was still finding out what it was, still reacting against the previous generation. Then you had punk, and you had the new romantics, and this idea that the story was still being written. There are lots of amazing young new bands now releasing great records, and I always seek out new music, but it feels like the story, such as it is, has been written.
But so much of that music was a comment specifically on its times.
Yeah.
And as I said, that's what you're having to persuade artists of, that, it doesn't matter if this was a sort of punk thing. Now people like it for some completely different reason. And it's whether you think there's enough of contemporary engagement, of frontline music engagement with its own times, or whether we're just being narcotized by this kind of nostalgic journey into a place that many of us never even were in the first place.
Yeah. It feels like what I call catalogue is taking over from the sort of that kind of raw fury of new music.
Yeah, the big, huge decade at the moment that is master of all its surveys is the noughties, which is strange because it's
I don't
you know,
know,
it's
the
the 20-year
noughties for
cycle.
me are lost.
Yeah.
The 80s I know, the 90s I'm pretty much on top of. The noughties for me, I couldn't tell you anything that came out.
Oh, you could. There's a lot of Britney, but it's the particularly toxic. It's such a toxic era.
Literally toxic.
It's celebrity culture that decade
Okay.
particularly. I think it's I said before, celebrity culture and Islamic fundamentalism.
Oh wow!
But actually, the
That's like
financial
your new
crash,
book.
stealing in 2008 is
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, we played that amazing game, Hitster. Have you played that? It's a really, really cool game that's on your phone, and you play music, and you've got a series of cards, and you have to put them in order of the years that they happened. You play it in teams, and honestly, anything, if it's 70s, 80s, I can tell you the exact year. I can almost tell you the month. As soon as it gets to, I would say the Timberlake era, I'm like, I know the song.
Once he decouples from NSYNC.
Yeah, exactly. That's Justin Timberlake leaving NSYNC is that's pretty much when.
That's it.
Yeah, for music. Let's talk about Kalshi and Polymarkets. So they're these two businesses. They're called prediction markets. Now, you and I would look at these things and go, hold on, they're betting companies. Because essentially, you can predict anything. You could predict the score of the Super Bowl on Kalshi and Polymarket. You could predict the score on Premier League football. You could predict all sorts of things. So to you and I,
the
that would be...
viewership of the Super Bowl. All sorts of... The weather in your state.
But, that's not a prediction. It's a bet. Okay, but it's called prediction, and that becomes important. Financially, that becomes important in this story. Now, these two companies, Kalshi and Polymarket, very hard to get official figures of quite how much they turn over. But it looks like last year they're somewhere around 63 billion. And that is almost double.
They thought it was 12 billion in December alone.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely huge. And the way they're doing it, if you go on the front page of Kalshi and Polymarket, which you must do after this, it's very, very interesting. I wouldn't recommend anyone bets because you will lose. But, it's just interesting sociologically to look. That's the thing I'd always say, not bet responsibly, but just remember that you will definitely lose money. There will be, as you say, there'll be Oscar bets you can make. What's going to win, best movie. There will be bets on how many times is Elon Musk going to tweet next week. Currently, favourite is 360 to 379. Bernie Sanders is about to do a speech in North Carolina. Will he use any of the following words? Will he use the word Minneapolis? You can bet on that. You can bet on when Donald Trump might bomb Iran. You can bet on this awful story of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the US presenter who's been kidnapped. You can bet on whether they're going to arrest someone. I mean, you can bet on anything. You can bet, I'll give you the odds in fact, you can bet on will Jesus Christ return before 2027? What sort of chance do you think there is of that happening?
Tell me at time of recording.
At time of recording, 4%.
Wow, that's
a
nothing.
lot. I mean, that's America. You can also get, will the USA reveal the existence of aliens? That's 10% at the moment. So it's a betting thing, but it's not just on,
By the way, if they've got anything, they should put it out right now.
Yes.
It'd be very helpful in many ways.
Well, I presume that's why some people are betting on it. They're thinking that's Trump's last card, isn't it? By the way,
Area 51
there was an alien.
may hold the key to this.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you say, in the States, for whatever reason, these companies are classed as prediction markets, not betting companies.
Because sports betting is illegal till
It's legal in 20 states, betting.
Now it is, but until something like 2018, and they had to go to the Supreme Court and overturn it all, and then they've done it at federal level, and some people have allowed different versions of it. Yeah. Which is kind of weird for us because we don't understand that culture.
We can bet on anything. And the two big companies in the betting space are FanDuel and DraftKings, which are regulated as gambling entities, and you can bet in 20 states and you can't bet in the other 30. Now, all of these companies, why are we talking about it on an entertainment podcast? And the reason is they are all inveigling their way into entertainment, especially into live entertainment, which, as we know, that's the biggest version of entertainment that is left for us. So DraftKings and FanDuel, you'll see all over. If you live in a particular state, you'll be able to see the progress of your bets on screen as you're watching a NFL game. We saw at the Golden Globes, Polymarket were the company who were providing the odds, saying who's going to win Best Actor, who's going to win.
They paid a huge amount for that.
Some people say they paid 100 million.
I know.
I don't think they did pay 100 million, but they paid a lot.
It was really sort of janky. I mean, it looked really naff. But the hosts mentioned them all, and I think Hollywood sort of bristled at them being there.
Having spoken to people involved, I think Polymarket themselves understand that what they did at the Golden Globes, which is who's about to win this thing that you're going to win, which by and large in most award ceremonies you sort of know, actually rather spoiled it.
Yeah.
And they should be betting on how many people thank their agent, how many people go over their time. Whimsical things that add a little bit of value to a broadcast. You're still advertising your company and you're still getting value for money, but you are making the broadcast better. But it is clear that Kalshi, who've got deals at CNN, CNBC.
Well, that's the weirdest thing at the moment. They've got a ticker running along the bottom on CNN, and you can bet on, the news is a market. You can bet on things happening much as you would be able to see a ticker going across a sports broadcast and bet on those things. Or the stocks, which is the thing that legitimizes it. Because Wall Street is essentially gambling, of course, and always has been, there's something kind of heritage and legacy about the idea that, futures markets have always been with us, just in different forms.
The trick they're playing, and the trick they've been allowed to play, is they're legislated as a financial services company, as a prediction company, as a derivatives company, if you want to get completely specific about what they're regulated as. So people are not gambling, they're making informed decisions on where the future of a market might be. So they find themselves in a situation where they are not regulated in the way that betting companies are. So they can sort of embed themselves in news, and they can embed themselves in in sport and all of these type of things without any sort of legislation against it.
Can I give you an example of how unregulated they are? Because I found this so funny. Somebody on Kalshi opened an account, as in had never traded before, made one trade on the Super Bowl, bet 50k that Gaga would be a kind of guest of Bad Bunny. Then 6 hours later, made 8 out of 8 correct predictions on people who would not be co-performers, and then said, yes, but Ricky Martin would do. It's just completely unreal. Okay, so obviously what I'm saying, in case it's not extremely obvious because you're not a betting person, that is obviously a form of insider trading. But also, obviously that person knows what's happening.
And also, in the derivatives market, you don't actually get prosecuted for insider trading.
No.
That's you are allowed to use personal knowledge that you have, and which is what people do. I mean, even to the extent that there was a bet placed just before Nicolas Maduro was captured by the Americans, a bet that made $400,000 that Maduro would be captured in the next day. Now, I mean, that's someone who knows that Maduro is about to be
bides time on
captured.
The stakeout.
Yeah, exactly. There was an allegation which has not been proved that Caroline Leavitt, Trump's press secretary, she was doing a press briefing, and you can bet on how long the press briefings will take. And they said just before, I think, the 65-minute mark, she looked at her watch and stopped immediately. So there were people saying, "Oh, I bet that someone's had a bet on Kalshi or Polymarket." So you find yourself in this wild west over there, where you have these companies that allow you, you don't need to mince your words, to bet on pretty much anything.
Richard, that is fascinating in a dark way. How will it influence this world that we talk about, entertainment?
The guy who came up with Polymarket, October last year, he became the world's youngest ever self-made billionaire. Okay, and he was 28 years old, 27 years old, in fact, last year. He's a self-made billionaire through Polymarket. Now, I suspect that his title has just been taken by someone we talked about the other week, and I think for the same reason. So we talked about Kalshi Lame, the TikTok star who just signed $1 billion deal for e-commerce. And what these guys are doing, and what they really want to get into, is we talked for years and years about second screen viewing, which is people are always on their phone when your program is on the television. Now, there's two things they can be doing: looking at someone else's content that someone else is monetizing, giving their data to somebody else, or they can be looking at something which you have a part of. E-commerce, of course, is that. So that's why Kalshi Lame is worth $1 billion, because you can be watching him and you can be buying something at the same time. And Polymarket and Kalshi are are worth so much money because you can be betting on the thing you are watching. And in the same way that we all understand that, you can bet in match and the football, you can be watching a reality show and be betting all the way through. So you're double screening, but the people who are funding the big screen are also getting money from the small screen as well.
Who's going to win Traitors? Who's going to go at this round table? That sort of thing.
All of that kind of stuff. I mean, the interesting thing, Kalshi, you've got huge markets right now on Survivor, on Traitors, on Love is Blind, Beast Games, all of that stuff. So where is this going? Well, I would say this from producers I talk to in the States and from people at those companies. Television is not overfunded at the moment. We have a funding crisis in television. People are looking for money from everywhere. Movies are as well. That's why they're looking for Saudi Arabian money. If there's money out there, people want it. Polymarket and Kalshi find themselves absolutely awash with money. I mean, crazily awash with money. And not that many places that they can spend it. Okay? So, they can spend it on Super Bowl, they can spend it on live sports, they can spend it on live events, those sorts of things. But we are going to get to the stage where they start funding events themselves. So you'll get in the same way that you can bet on Survivor and Traitors and what have you, which is a slightly tricky market for them because some people know already who's won. Yeah. But if you're Polymarket and you team up with one of the big entertainment producers, which is definitely what they will do, you are producing shows that are live, that are always on, and that have a series of things in them that you can bet on. So you're producing you team up with a big entertainment producer, you come up with a format that's very sticky anyway and is very exciting anyway, and you just run it and run it and run it and run it, and in it there is market after market after market. The prize money for that show and
the creators are literally just greyhounds.
Yeah.
No offence to greyhounds or creators.
The entire budget of that show, the entire winnings of that show can be funded by losing bets.
Oh, beyond far. I mean, the amount of money.
And that is definitely coming down the track. Over here, it will be harder because over here they will be regulated as betting companies.
But also, one of the things that I think about when you talk like that is that I think the culture is already so softened up for it. We've talked about it how often before, even down to the things like buying Labubus. People expect there to be disappointment, something transactional, the gamification of absolutely every single tiny thing. And that huge, a lot of people always say, when they're trying to be clever about gambling, it's a form of self-loathing, you're addicted to losing because that's the thing that happens most. And actually that's the thing, it's a form of whatever.
An agent was asked about it and he was saying these newer audiences, exactly that, increasingly accustomed to and addicted to interacting with what's on their screens. And he said, look at what fantasy football has done for the NFL, right? It's increased viewership and increases people's engagement. This agent says, when you gamify things, everything's more interesting, which it
matters more when there's money on it.
I have a lot of sympathy with if you gamify something, it's more interesting, for sure. And if you're playing fantasy football, I had to give up fantasy football because it got too interesting for me. Because everything that happened, it had an impact on me.
One day at a time.
The thing about fantasy football is it doesn't cost you anything. The thing about gambling is it does cost you something. It costs you a lot. And actually, online gambling is, very available to people, but it sort of is and it sort of isn't. Gambling is not overt in our culture in the way that entertainment is. I know if you watch Sky, there's a million gambling adverts. I absolutely get it. But it's not overt in our culture. Whereas if you take this new generation of people who, as you say, are used to having a transactional relationship with the people they love watching on TV, if you've got a TV show that you can bet on and it's live and involves creators who we know are on a piece of it, and that's absolutely fine, and sponsored by someone who's on a piece of it, and that's absolutely fine because that's what we've grown up with. That is a situation where you've got to be very careful. How we can see the money it brings in and we can see how it's funded, but who is funding it? And betting companies tend to make a lot of their money from a small amount of people. So for TV producers, I think it's very interesting that there's this prediction market of ridiculous things. And I think it's certainly interesting that there's a lot of money out there, a lot of money. And I think it's interesting that the people at Polymarket and Kalshi are also reaching out and saying, what is it that we can do? We're not quite, they haven't stumbled upon these billions, but in a way they also sort of have a little bit. It's taken them by surprise, quite the pickup they have on some of the most ridiculous markets that they have. So somewhere that is all going to come together. What
else I think that we started to see is that young people are saying, oh, I'll check Polymarket. They want to watch the news. They just want to see a needle telling them exactly how likely something is to happen.
Yeah.
That's enough news. So again, that sort of slightly worries me that every single tiny thing is being reduced
In
to
the
this,
world
like,
of if
you know,
you
what's
use-
going to tell me, just give me the results.
Yeah, there is an argument that says that in the world of news, this is incredibly dangerous because if people start using it as a predictive tool, then it ends in a very bad place. Personally, I don't think that's an issue. I think people are smart enough about markets. You look at the markets for any political thing, and you know it's just where the money has gone. That's that's all it is. And that, by the way, is the same in prediction markets. It's not really predicting. It's just where has the rest of the money gone. That's all. I just think that it is, while they are legal or quasi-legal in the States, a number of big entertainment propositions are going to crop up in the next 18 months. Wildly funded. Yeah, I mean, funded like an entertainment show hasn't been for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I remember when we were like, "Oh my God, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?" That's so clever. They're giving away the million because everyone's ringing in, and they're taking a piece of the phone line, and that was like the most revolutionary thing anyone ever done. But if you want to do a TV show with a £25 million prize, here you go. Absolutely doable, but it would be funded by losing bets. But everyone I speak to is thinking about it. Certainly those companies are thinking about it as well. As I say, over here, you wouldn't necessarily be able to commission it because of the regulatory issues. But if you're YouTube or if you're someone like that, then of course you could do.
In some ways, it's hard because the one other drawback to it, even within their like TV market or whatever it is that shows have to be live at the same time for everyone to be, and because of the time differences across the states, it's hard to export. You have to create local versions, but I'm sure with AI they could find that quite easy.
But here's the thing, with this always on, I mean, you just create something that does that. That's the point if you're an entertainment producer.
Well, you just do it on YouTube.
You go, oh, what's the issue? Oh, the issue is that we can't put it at 9 o'clock Eastern time because that's, the rest of the world don't have that. You think, well, hold on, I've got steps all around the world. I've got different time zones everywhere in the world that I can schedule different things for different markets. But, the place is the same, the platform is the same. It's just you use that fact. So that for me would be a positive rather than a negative. Also, if you're a podcaster, I mean, have an always on podcast where, random events are happening, which can be predicted or not predicted. I mean, it's there's free money right there. But
I can assure you that if we have one, you are running it. You would.
No,
but again, you become too obsessed with it.
I'm not going anywhere near it.
Imagine how obsessed you'd become with it.
But it's these ideas are so simple and they're all out there, and people will do them. I do not need a cut. But it's all there. Anything live and unpredictable that can be funded by a company making money off people betting on unpredictable things is an absolute shoo-in in the next 18 months, 2 years. We're going to have big entertainment propositions which are live, which are funded entirely by prediction markets. Over here, they will be gambling companies. But I just thought it's an interesting thing for people to keep an eye on when something like this crops up. You go, this is where it's come from, and this is why it's come about as well. But everybody I speak to now in the world of live events, in the world of entertainment, is having conversations about this and about this extraordinary source of money. I think for the movie industry, I don't see there's anything in this. I don't see it. I don't see how that works, particularly for micro dramas. Yes, 100%. If I am Kalshi or Polymarket, I would put so much money into microdramas because I have 20, 30, 40 different cliffhangers which I can release. I have absolute control on when they get released. I absolutely can have an either or thing that happens at the end of every single one of those things. So 100% it will go into microdramas, but also the world of game, reality, creator, influencer, economy, stuff that has any sort of challenge, stuff that has any sort of A or B option to it. All of that can be paid for by this, and it'd be a market which they would massively exploit. So
imagine
look
how
out for
many more
both of those.
people you need trying to work out whether people are insider trading, or do you just not have any?
I don't think they're fast, because they're so long as they're making money. They always say you never see a broke bookie. Not that these people are bookies; they're prediction marketeers. Any recommendations this week?
Live winter sport. I have been loving. I meant to say this actually last week. Absolutely not understanding anything in the commentary on some really obscure snowboarding event. I've loved the Winter Olympics. BBC are doing it brilliantly. There's a couple of snowboarding commentators Tim
Woolwood and Ed Lee, who've done an answer for us on our Q&A before.
Yes, they have.
Lovely boys.
Absolutely hilarious. I enjoyed that. I saw Arcadia, Tom Stoppard's Arcadia, which has been revived, and I saw it at the Old Vic, which I absolutely loved. But for me, the play is beyond a masterpiece. It's absolutely extraordinary. It is the absolute star, and I found it was absolutely wonderful to see that. And I'm also very much enjoying Mackenzie Crook's.
That's what I was going to recommend.
If
I can, I've absolutely, Mackenzie Crook is such an interesting guy. He's such a great writer, and he's got such a particular worldview. That show is brilliant. It's almost impossible to explain what it's about because it's about something very unusual. But what it's really about is about human beings. And it's got Piers Quigley playing a guy who's working in a DIY store. His life has sort of collapsed. There's all sorts of mysteries going on. Definitely going to be a huge cult sitcom because it's great. I think it really has a chance to be a big mainstream sitcom. And one of the reasons, firstly, is Mackenzie Crook's, his whole vibe is very mainstream. But it's got Michael Palin right in the middle of it, playing Piers Quigley's dad and playing him brilliantly. And weirdly, it's on BBC Two, and very little's on BBC Two now. And I know they're trying to put a little bit more on, and that idea of BBC have got less money, but they're spending it on, fewer and fewer things. But, the quality control has to be very high, and certainly the quality control on that, I would say, is absolutely through the roof. Small Profits, it's called, with a PH.
That, I think, wraps us up. But we'll be back on Thursday, as always, with a Q&A, some of which will be a bit of an awards season special. We've got some really interesting answers from some awards season people.
We'd had lots of questions about awards, so we put them to people who know more than us. And also on Friday, for the first time, I'm going to start doing a thing where I interview people about books. It's the National Year of Reading this year, and I'm an ambassador for it, and so part of my job is to make more people read more things. And so I'm going to interview a few people, ask them about books, book recommendations, and so on. So we're piloting it on Friday, and we're piloting it with me talking to you about your favourite books.
You just made me sound like a fake guest.
No, you're not a fake guest. No, because imagine if you didn't do this podcast, you'd be an amazing guest. They'd be like, Marina Hyder said yes. I'd be like, oh my God, you never hear her, do you? You see, she writes all that stuff, and she's really funny, but you never actually hear her on something. I'd be amazed to hear what her voice sounds like. So I look forward to talking to you about books. You'll have some book recommendations, and we'll see if that works as a format, and then I'll do it with other people.
Oh, I'll make it work.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a second. I don't doubt that for 1 second.
Right, everybody.
See you on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.